Hi, everybody. Clarke Tanner, physical therapist, life coach, and founder of Thrive Physical Therapy and Wellness in Richmond, Virginia. And this is Strive to Thrive, your weekly podcast designed to help improve your health, increase your success level, and ultimately help you thrive in life.
Yeah, my name is Cody Shilhaas. I'm a Thrive Physical Therapist as well. Today, I think we're going to be bringing you to a very exciting topic about, or is our take on how to change posture. Right? So before you turn off the channel, before you skip to the next episode, so I just mentioned the word posture, which is kind of a foul word in a lot of people's language. We just want to kind of give you guys a different description about how we think you can approach it. We're going to give you a little bit more information about why we think it's so important. And then we also want you guys to really try to buckle down and listen to this podcast and hopefully learn something from it, because a lot of the afflictions and the impairments that we see come in the door are either A, directly related to postural problems, or B, at least aggravated or increased by postural deficits and postural impairments. So hoping that everyone gets a chance to listen through this and then learn something. And if you're dealing with any pains in your life, this may help you guys out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the emotional response around posture is like,
Right.
Posture, because I think inherently we all sort of know that posture does matter.
Mm-hmm.
I know my parents told me, sit up straight.
Oh, yeah.
Now as an adult and a dad,
Don't tell CJ that, dude.
we have a 12-year-old son who can't go through dinner or anything without being, sit up straight. We try to be try to do it in certain ways. But it's something we all know that we need to do, but yet it's something that is not always a fun topic for people, and so many people have issues around it. And I think in my opinion, it's really sort of misunderstood as to what. One, I think it's important to understand how completely important it is, and how much it affects you in different ways. And I think that once you start to understand it about what it really is and why it's so important, then maybe it becomes a little more exciting topic, and hopefully above and beyond just, oh yeah, dad or mom told me all these years to have good posture and I either do or I don't, So anyway, and I think there are very easy ways to attain decent posture and good body position without it being something that's like drudgery or feeling like it's a ton of work. So
yeah, and I think that's the whole point. It's like we talk about posture in the clinic quite a bit. So as a physical therapist, I may drone on about posture more than some people do on a daily basis, especially as someone my age. But the point is, posture doesn't have to be something is either one forced or one effortful. It should be something that's easy to incorporate into your daily life. And I think even the word posture itself has a lot of different meanings. But one of the things that we like to, correlate to is just, posture doesn't have to be some rigid structure in which you live your life. We don't want people to believe that, posture. I think that's what people get weirded out about, right? It's the fact that I have to maintain this set, upright, rigid position.
Tense.
And, the way I describe it is people are already at mental capacity. No matter where you are in your daily life, no matter what you do, no matter what you experience, you're probably pushing yourself mentally to the end of your limits, or what you perceive those limits to be currently, right? So people don't want to take on more. I don't want a constant presence of a task that I have to be doing all the time. So I think the hard part is getting them to overcome that and realize that posture doesn't have to be all the time. It has to be certain times, and then it has to be frequent, but not some huge mental task.
Yeah, I think what people think of it is this tension, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like this, and it's like this, okay, don't let me move my head or my eyes, right?
Yeah,
I can't really move at all, and that's not at all what posture is all about. It's for me, the definition of posture and good body position is knowing about alignment, but it being a very fluid thing, right? So that you spend more of your day and things that you do habitually and for prolonged periods of time that you have some idea of where this middle balanced position is that is also very relaxed. You shouldn't be working really hard to attain good posture, and there's lots of ways to do that, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Let's talk about the physics of it just for a second, because we're going to talk about some other things that I think are extremely important, at least as important as the physics and the physical part of it. But let's just really quick, because we got to do it some justice around it from a physical therapy standpoint.
I'll take physics. I'll let you handle blood chemistry.
Okay. So forehead, common thing. A lot of people work in workstations and on computers, and that's a common thing, right? So give them the 30-second. The physics
breakdown of what it is, right? So the reason why we kind of talk about the typical posture that we see, right? And this is variable for everybody. But if we're looking at what we could be considered poor posture, it's typically forward head, so chin falls past level of your sternum, It's going to be a little bit of neck flexion here at your back, which then will pull your shoulders and your upper back forward, right? So a lot of time our body follows our head. So if my head falls forward, the rest of me tends to follow suit.
Computer screen, right?
Yeah, so
somewhere around here,
I'm on my phone, or if I'm working on something small, whatever it may be, we tend to see this forward head posture. What that does is once you pull here to counterweight, you have to rotate your pelvis backwards. So it ends up rounding your low back in conjunction. So you get this big rounded curve through low back and upper back, and then your head tends to fall forward. Now the physics behind that's based off of torque. Right? The further my head goes forward, the further it gets from my midline, the more torque that my neck takes, and that causes things like headaches, neck pain, pressure pain. And the more flexion I put my body in, the more pressure I put on the backside of my spine. So that creates more posterior pain in my back. So now I get pressure there as well. We can go on a whole multitude of hips and ankles and all this stuff as well. But the most important thing is, from a physics standpoint, is that simply the closer you can bring your moving segments to midline, the less stress that they take, right? So if I can get rid of the torque, which is, torque inherently is just the longer the lever arm, so the longer my body gets away from midline, the more force it puts through it, the more advantageous that force is. So if I pull that force back and I line up my segments, now the torque's decreased, and now I just have less force on my joints, right? It's just a simple equation. So that's good static posture, and that's something we want people to think about while they're working. Now, I think the key for physics, and just like everything else, is it's always occurring, it's always happening. But as we know with force, we don't have to. If you maintain force for a long period of time, it creates more harm, right? But if we break that force up and we move forces around, we see a better distribution. All of a sudden, the force development, or the net force, is lower. So things feel better more often, right?
Right. And essentially a way to kind of break it down, and what he's describing is it's like blocks, right? If you would want to stack the blocks on top of each other, that's a more stable vertically. And then when you do that, muscles don't work as hard. We tend to just feel better. But there's another side to posture, and really interesting study by a Harvard researcher. Her last name was Cody. And she's done multiple studies, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, kind of put a couple studies together. But what they did was they took participants where they had people assume either a very upright, what they call power poses, like kind of superhero position, right? What do you see, right? It's very upright, maybe the extreme of position, which we don't necessarily endorse, but upright, sort of confident, more upright posture, versus the more slouched, maybe what would be less confident, more of a rounded shoulder position, and had them assume it for 2 minutes, and then they went in, and they measured some things. They measured some biochemical things. Okay, so they measured cortisol level, and they measured testosterone level. Both men and women have testosterone level. Cortisol is a stress hormone that affects inflammatory mediators in the blood. So inflammation tends to be worse. Things tend to hurt more. We don't want a lot of stress hormones circulating in our blood, so it doesn't make us feel good. Okay, the other part is testosterone level. It actually lowered testosterone level around 15 to 20%. Okay, so slouched, negative posture, lowered testosterone, which affects our mood, and makes us feel less confident, less reassured, and that sort of thing. So feel more stressed, less confident. This position. Okay. Upright position, as little as 2 minutes, had the exact opposite effect. So in other words, you raised testosterone level by about 20%. Okay, excuse me, let me get my numbers right. It was 15%, and then it also lowered cortisol level, so reduced your cortisol level. So in other words, very short periods of time, they found in that study actually had some pretty significant biochemical effects. Now, we work with patients all the time that have physical things that hurt. We want them to feel better. Well, and inflammation is an issue, but we also, our thought process and our mental state affects our entire life. And so that's something that there's a direct link between body and what the body's doing and what's happening biochemically. And then the other step of that was then they put them through a deliberately stressful interview situation. Okay. And then they had objective observers. It was videotaped, and the objective observers would analyze how people did in the interview. And the really interesting thing to me was they found that the people that did the pre-power pose, so to speak, were 6 times more likely to be recommended for the job, and they were just perceived as more authentic. Not that they necessarily had better things to say, or that there was any necessarily one component of the interview, but just that they were perceived differently, which I think we sort of intellectually get, right? Like we all know, like you can see somebody this, and we make some assumptions on where their mental state is and whether they feel confident or not. Maybe they're depressed, that kind of thing. So there is a mental capacity component to what postures we assume, right? And so somebody who's very depressed and is maybe here, a lot of times maybe it's not a physical thing that you got to work with, right? It's those other things that you need to work with. But just the point is, there's physics and there's the mechanical piece of posture, but there's this biochemical, emotional piece to posture, and how we move is kind of the bridge, right? Yeah. And so it's a much more far-reaching kind of a thing.
I think that perception of posture, I kind of want to talk about that, because I think that's a really interesting topic. As human beings, we read body language first, well before we hear, before we interpret anything else that's going on, right? So body language is the very first language you're going to pick up when you meet someone for the very first time, and that automatically gets your brain working in a certain way, right? And so that person, so say you come in with poor posture for an interview, that person already subcortically makes a connection about you. Right? They've already determined something about you, whether that be at a conscious level or not. Yeah. Now you're going to have to, if you're assuming poor posture, you're going to have to do something to change that person's mind right off the bat, right? There's also been some things that I've read that show that when you're surrounded by people who have good posture, based off of your personality, you either become more submissive, or you can either actually become, you kind of assimilate and become a little bit more stronger or more confident as well. Sure. So that depends on your personality, but being in a group of people who presume with good posture or poor posture actually can directly affect your mood as well. So there's kind of the same process as like a strong family figure, a strong father figure, a strong body posture usually promotes the same thing in his daughter or son or his child.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what portrays strength, right? Yeah. We perceive good, upright, confident. Feels strong.
Right. Yeah.
So my way of cueing CJ is that I go strong boys, and I'll just sort of gently encourage him, and he kind of does this. That seems to be better than sit up straight. although strong voice isn't always it doesn't always work. Yeah. But how do we make this easy? Because this is something we talk about. Like so first off, I think one perception is that posture is an awareness, right? It's a fluid thing. It should not be tension, right? You can set up things to encourage good position and good posture. If you're fighting to maintain this position of quote unquote good posture, this ideal, so to speak, and it can, if it's very hard, well, to me that's a problem. Like you got to figure out what's happening. It could be a strength issue, a mobility issue as to why trying to hold better, quote unquote good posture is difficult. So sometimes that has to be sorted out. But the other thing for me is learning that it's just about finding middle ground, and you should be relaxed. Yeah. A way to make sitting easier is two really easy things. One, set your chair, have a chair that's a little bit higher so that your hips are higher than your knees. Sit forward in the chair, and then when you sit down, exaggerate your squat so that when you sit down, you're really sitting on your sit bones rather than your rear end. Because what happens is you sit down and you hit on the rear end, that tilt creates the posterior pelvic tilt. You get a lot of weight on your sort of rear end, and then that takes your foundation and everything wants to fall down. Okay, so when you sit down, you chest up, stick out your rear end, upper thigh touches so that you're on the sit bones, and then you just relax. Well, now sitting upright, you have a foundation to do it, and it's much easier. And then there's ways to do things with workstation and that kind of stuff to make it easy. So you can make posture very easy, and then all it really is awareness. So it doesn't take work necessarily; it just takes being aware. And what are your tricks in terms of getting people to be aware without?
Awareness is huge. I mean, that's the first step. First of all, you just have to intellectually admit to yourself that I'm in a bad position and I need to change it. Right. So if you get to a point where it's like I'm not comfortable, and then your body will tell you eventually. But the whole idea is you want to get to a point to where you make these changes before your body lets you know. Right. So once your body's told you already, you've already kind of hit the form of inflammation and excessive pressure, and this kind of things. But for awareness checks, for me. One of the initial things is I like to talk about, my favorite tips is basically one, square your feet, right? So you want to make sure that you have equal weight between your feet. So if your legs are extended or they're kicked out, or if they're crossed, or if they're tucked up underneath you or whatever, you have a poor base of support. And that tends, if you don't have a good base of support, you tend to take more weight through your sacrum and you take more weight through the backside of your pelvis, right, to the glute. So I tell people is make sure your feet are square, and if your heels should be resting underneath your knees. Now, one big tip for me is you want to drive weight down through your feet when you're sitting, right? Now, what should happen if you're in a good position is your shoulders and your torso should go toward the ceiling. So you should move upward, right, vertically. If your feet are in a bad position or you're not in a great spot, what happens is until you push your feet forward, it'll send you backwards in your chair. And that weight pushing you backwards will end up causing your sacrum to round over time. It's a ground reaction force. It's that Newton's third law, where for every force there's an opposite force, right? Well, the same thing goes with your feet on the ground. If your feet are here, the ground's pushing back on you, and it'll eventually cause you to round if you're not in a good spot. Same goes for if your feet are underneath your chair. That reaction force will tend you to go forward as a result. So over time, people will either slouch to compensate for that because they don't want to fall out of the chair, or it can cause a little bit of lordosis in your back, which can cause issues. So the next thing I say is set your feet well, and then just to check, drive weight down through your heels, and then your body should go vertical. If that happens, it means your feet are set up in a good spot, and that helps align your pelvis in a pretty good way as well. So it's just a great postural check.
Like it.
But that's the long-winded way, basically, to say that for stagnant posture or static posture, you need to set yourself up well. But the biggest thing, I think, the most important thing for people to remember is that within the constraints of posture, you just need to move. Yeah, you just need to be more mobile. I mean, the biggest thing is I don't care what position you take. If everyone came into me with perfect posture and they sat in perfect position for 8 hours a day, I would still have to treat them, not constantly, right?
Yeah.
Good postural positioning helps, and it's good to be in, and it's important, but it's not the true solution, right? The true solution is don't sit for an hour, right? Or if you do sit for an hour, sit in a different position for an hour. Try sitting cross sit. Try to sit, in a squat. Maybe I do a long sit with my legs long. Move your positions. Get up, take a walk. That's the stuff that dissipates force, and that's the stuff that also gets your blood chemistry moving in a good direction. Far better than just presuming a powerful posture is getting up and moving. And I think if I had to make posture easy for anyone, I would say, yes, you want to sit well. Yes, you want to align well. But more importantly, every 15 to 30 minutes, get up out of your chair and move. Stretch, do 15 jumping jacks, whatever it may be. And just make that an active practice, and then if you get good at that, it becomes a habit. If it becomes a habit, then you don't have to think about it so much.
And my little small additions to that is absolutely move. The two tricks on that. One is you can put a little sticky note on your monitor somewhere when you see it, or like, okay, every time I see my Thrive bracelet, that's a signal to move. Like designate something as your signal to move, and also your signal to be aware, right? And then the other is if you tend to be the type of person that gets all enthralled in what you're doing and you spilling water. So is drink a lot. Actually, it's perfect. Drink a lot of water. Because then, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have to get up and go to the bathroom, and it causes you to move. And then if you're on one floor, maybe go to the bathroom on the floor down below, up a floor or something. Like go somewhere where you got to walk and you got to move. We are not meant to be stationary. We're made to move, and there's lots of real important reasons for that.
Gosh, yeah.
But the key really is just being aware, and make it into something that's playful, make it into something that's fun. It doesn't have to be drudgery.
I think
Nor should it be.
You're not playing a violin, right?
Yeah.
It's not. We're not trying to impress anybody. We're not trying to transpose this, perfect etiquette posture anymore. That's not necessary. The goal is just if you're looking at from a truly physical standpoint and how to keep myself healthy longer, the solution is, when you have to sit, try to sit well. And sitting well, there's a lot of different variations of that. Best to be discussed with your physical therapist when you get a chance. But the point would be just, like you talked about, you want to sit, equally on your pelvis, feet should be square, chest should be, up. But it's not this hard, rigid hold. It's just keeping yourself set up in a good situation. And then every 15 to 30 minutes, the humans are not meant to be static, right? We're not supposed to be in that position. It's not what we're designed for biologically. That's a work life and a social construct that we perform, and that's fine. I'm not taking that away from anybody. It's just you have to adjust and you have to adapt. And the best way to do that is just to move. Move often.
Yes. Yeah. One of my favorite slogans of a company that I know is move well, period. Okay. So having an understanding of what that is, that's something that we teach every day. And then move often. So it's like know what it is, and then
just put it in practice.
That was great slogan. So
no, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else to report?
No, I mean that I think if you get the idea of the concepts we talked about,
make posture easy. That's the biggest thing. Posture should be simple. Don't overcomplicate it. And then if you're going to approach it for the first time, if you're deciding to make that step, which you should, if you're saying, you know what, today I'm going to have good posture, right? I'm going to promote that myself because it's going to do me it's going to make myself healthier and happier going further down the road. The first step is set a timer, set a sticky note. Every 30 minutes that you're sitting in your chair, I don't care if you're watching a movie, if you're on your computer, if you're on your phone, get up and do something else, right? And between those time spans. And then secondly, when you are sitting in those positions, just really be aware of your alignment, try to breathe into it, and just be comfortable and relax, and just getting that awareness in the first place. It's the first step. So I would say, make that action today. It's never too late to start. It's, always a good time to get this rolling. And the more you are aware of your body and the more you're aware of your alignment, just the easier this gets.
And prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Oh my gosh.
So, so frequently we see people that have had problems and issues, and that's how we end up seeing them. We would love to not have that happen. I mean, it's way better to have an appreciation and awareness, because this is really a very powerful thing. You can change someone's body position and immediately change their symptoms. So it's a very powerful thing. So having some awareness around it is very well worth being aware and taking some effort, and do something before you ever develop any issues. And the fringe benefit of that is not only will you potentially avoid issues, but just emotionally it has a huge impact. You just end up feeling better mentally, physically, emotionally. And so there's a lot of really fringe benefits. And with anything, there's some effort and some awareness that needs to happen. It's well worth it. Okay. And make it enjoyable, make it something that's light, make it something that's fun. Don't turn it into drudgery.
Right, absolutely. All right, guys, well, cool. Well, basically what we'd recommend is if you get a chance, look onto our website or follow us on any of our social media sources, be Facebook, Instagram. You'll hopefully see some information we put out about posture. And we're also producing a lot of information or a lot of content regarding how to get up and move, some healthy alternatives to sitting in your chair for 30 minutes, or something you can substitute in those blocks that you do want to get up and get around. So go ahead and look to our site for that. And if you guys have any questions about posture, if you're dealing with anything posture related, whether that be pain, discomfort, curiosity, whatever it may be, please contact either us at Thrive or talk to your local physical therapist if you're listening from out of Richmond. We'd love you guys to address this problem early. PT is a great source and a great advocate for this kind of thing. If everyone got a postural assessment once a year, I think we would, be less busy.
Yes.
Which is in a positive way, which is a good thing. So that's our Strive to Thrive podcast on kind of doing posture differently and a different approach on it. And thank you guys for listening.
Keep on thriving, everybody. Take steps to thrive. Take care.
And how do you feel?